I'm Rich Lesser, BCG CEO. I'm joined here with Mai-Britt Poulsen. Mai-Britt's our Global Chief of Staff and a great senior partner, and probably the person I work the most closely with. So we figured we'd have a conversation as we celebrate International Women's Day and the theme this year of Each for Equal. This agenda is incredibly important to us. It's something we focus on for ourselves. How do we boost the ranks of women throughout BCG in increasing our hiring, in the making sure that our rates of promotion for men and women stay equal as they have been for many years, in terms of how we build the ranks of women in the senior leadership of the firm. It's important as we think about what are the cutting edge topics, making sure women are in digital, supporting organizations like Grace Hopper to help STEM more broadly and women's accessibility to STEM, and continue to do cutting edge research, whether it's how to create more inclusion, how to create more return on the spend that happens inside companies, and how to actually support women and men as they shape their careers. So Mai-Britt, it's great to be here with you today. You've been talking about how to get women into leadership for years. In fact, I think that was one of the first really deep conversations we had, was research that you did on this years ago. How do you advise leaders when you're talking to them about this topic?
So I always try to take a step back and look at how is the outlook for the world. And when we look at the outlook, we're looking into a more complicated and more complex world. We see different geopolitical scenarios. We see some economic uncertainty. We see a lot of continued disruption from digital challenges and a lot of new technologies. And to win in the 20s, in the coming decade, diversity and inclusion is going to be very important, because we see companies that are innovative, has a better financial performance, they are more resilient, and they are more adaptive to changes in the external environment. So I always come from the business angle when I talk to company leaders and other leaders around why is diversity and inclusion so important.
I agree with you completely. And what I've also found is when you look at where things have gone wrong in companies and where there have been just poor decisions made that have led to risk issues and others, you often find environments that are very homogeneous, not just in gender, but in other ways. And I think that so it's part of its innovation and opportunity, but that's a huge issue as well.
Yeah, I agree. So we see organizations who have a wide range of voices are better at problem solving and also detecting different risk scenarios and acting proactively on them.
And the willingness to challenge the status quo. I just find the more different voices you have in the room, the more you get that. Okay, so there's many levers to pull. Like, what's at the top of your list when you're talking to a CEO about what are the kinds of levers that make the greatest difference?
Yeah, I think we start in the corner office, and in my book, it's really about ensuring commitment to diversity and inclusion in the company, and that has to be an agenda that the CEO drives and the executive team. So that's point number one. Point number two for me is knowing your data and understanding where are we. So what is the diversity in each function, in each geography, and down to a team level? Because if you don't know where you are, it's very hard to set targets and ask your leaders to advance, and also have the critical discussions. Why are we not progressing here? And then find solutions. And then the last thing I would say is that when we look into female leadership pipelines, often the moment of truth is when you start a family. So here I think organizations, companies have a big role to play in terms of supporting parental leave, flexible working models, and childcare.
You know, just to that point, so when I led New York, this was like 10, 15 years ago, we lost women in ways that I hadn't realized before they had families, because they didn't understand how committed we could be to them after they had families. And so I realized, to my surprise, it wasn't about engaging someone at the moment they had a family. It was about showing role models and engaging with people long before, so that they saw that we could make it work. Make it work in like a range of different ways. Not that there's one model. Model you choose is different from someone else, different from someone else. We could do that. I also find in today's world, having an environment where men feel like they can take paternity leaves, and that it's not just about women being the primary caregiver, but you try to create an environment where people can feel supported with their family choices, regardless of their family structure and independent of the roles that different members want to play. I think it's just so important to send a signal. This isn't a women's issue. This is supporting families.
Yes. I think that is very important. And what we've seen when we work with parental policies is exactly as you say, it helps the whole family.
I've spent the last week just doing partner reviews. Like I sit in this process, we have 1,400 partners, so it's a lot to go through.
Yes.
I was just struck by now how many men are starting to take paternity leaves, and now how you can talk about these leaves. And it's really we've come quite a long way. And I think helping our clients to think about how to make flexibility work, because each company has different norms and structures, and how do you engage men in owning that issue, not just women, as leaders is a big deal.
Yes, and I fully agree with that. I see a big change in the generations of younger leaders coming up, because here the men actually demand to take parental leave.
Yes.
Right? And they see it as something they're entitled to, and they should.
I completely agree. I also think that how we get men to understand the value of creating inclusivity in their teams, not just building diversity in their teams, but creating the sense of inclusion. It can't just be women helping women, right? It's the numbers don't work, but it just doesn't work culturally either.
No, I think that's very right. That's when we look at frontline leaders, that's actually where we see in our research that you can have the biggest impact on creating an inclusive environment. And if you look at today's split between men and women in leadership roles, it's very clear that we need to work everybody.
So where are you most encouraged about the progress you've seen, and where do you feel like we still have like the biggest gap to, and I don't mean BCG in this case, I mean like just when you talk to so many leaders on this topic, what's your sense?
Yeah, so we've just been in Davos this year, and one of the big conversations beyond climate and technology was diversity and inclusion. And I was so amazed visiting the Equality Lounge and seeing a number of top CEOs, including yourself, Rich, speaking about diversity and inclusion in their companies. That was really a big encouragement for me.
There was so much energy in that room.
Absolutely.
That was really terrific.
It was the best lounge.
It was my most fun part of the week. Okay, so we're going to do a lightning round to end. What was the best tip your mother ever gave you?
So I would say my mom was always very supportive in anything I wanted to do. And she always told me, and I remember from being a little girl, always believe in yourself. You know, the world is your playground, and go for whatever you like. And that was really an encouragement to me.
For mine, my mom was a school teacher. So the two things I remember are talking about around the dinner table about just each kid and like where they were coming from and how you help them to learn. And it was wonderful training to be CEO of a professional service firm where you have thousands of people and you're trying to help each one to their full potential. And the other thing I remember is that every September I was taller than she was, and I had to put the posters on the wall in her room, like when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, those sorts of posters.
Right.
But the one that stuck with me for this role is ships in a harbor are safe, but that is not what ships are built for. And she really believed that, and I really believe like that's like, if you're gonna give a CEO advice, it's like don't just stay with like keep doing what you're doing, but try new things. Okay, best tip from a female colleague.
It's one of our female leaders in BCG, and she told me when we were talking about how you put leadership teams together, and she told me, pick your leadership team members as you would pick your babysitter. And when I asked her, what do you mean with that? Then she told me about how she believes the leaders in the front line and in your team having the daily interactions are actually the ones making the difference to whether you build an inclusive environment or not.
Final question.
Yeah.
Who is the female leader you would say you admire the most?
So I would like to pick one from my country, Helle Thorning-Schmidt. She's from Denmark. She's the ex-prime minister. She actually visited us at one of our partner meetings.
She's one of our all-time highest rated speakers for when she spoke Save the Children, when she was leading Save the Children.
Exactly. She's very inspirational. So she's been prime minister in Denmark. She's been the leader of the Save the Children organization, and now she's pursuing board positions and building her own business. And she's actually also advising in diversity and inclusion. And I admire her because she's bold and she's out there in the front line, sometimes challenging status quo with some controversial messages. And I think that's bold, and that's what we need to advance the world.
She is terrific. That's a great choice. Okay, I'm not sure I can top that in the public domain. So I'll just say I think that the female leaders in BCG right now are just amazing. And I was thinking about REC, where you're there and like one of the best client service partners in the firm and helping us drive so much change right now. Christina, who's at the cutting edge of AI and also an amazing client service partner. Carol, who is this foundational person in helping us to build in China, now the chairwoman of China. Pia doing the same thing in insurance. Ulrika is this chief legal counsel who's taking on all these complex issues. And Sharon, who's like one of the all-time great client service people at BCG, first in consumer and now building public sector. Hey, look at this leadership ranks. And of course, it's that group in the executive committee, but so many others. It's just remarkable. It's really, I learned so much. It fills me with optimism about the future. Thank you, everyone. It was great to be with you, and have a wonderful day. And Each for Equal, I think, is a theme we can all embrace and try to move forward with together.